Greetings, ladles and jelly spoons. I expect the audio is fantastic once again, and I will pick up right where I left off, like one does when one cuts oneself off midstream. That's the goal here, but we always have to, because when we start something, it's tough to stop. It's just tough to stop. We have so much fun. It's fun to take. Well, I won't start off vulgar, or we'll get to the slap happy times later. Perhaps I'll try to start off more serious, and I'm going to pick up where I left off, where I was talking about music. I guess the theme right now is balance. And I was talking about the difference between like really organic artistic music and like corporate music or AI. And you want something in between. But really these topics of conspiracy and such, it's really interesting how, like music, it naturally wants to go to these extremes, and yet certain aspects about conspiracy topics never go to the extremes. And let me explain. You have a phenomenon, and you do an experiment to prove one way or another. And I used this example before, but I'll use it again because it's really like the perfect example. Les Stroud of Survivor Man was investigating the question of Bigfoot. And so he did this experiment where he went to a place where it was a hot spot of activity, supposedly, and he just has an open mind. And they say you put out candy bars and apples and things way up in this tree, 18 feet up in this tree, wedged really hard. And he has lots of experience with cameras. He has a motion activated camera. They put the apples and things up in the tree, and every night they disappear. So he puts up this little hidden, all the kinds of different like cameras or whatever, but this one was trained on the one spot. And if anything moves in front of the camera, it will record it within a fraction of a second. So there's no way that anything could remove the apple from the tree without being caught on film. So the apples were disappearing every night. Then he puts the camera out. So what can happen? A number of things. He puts the camera out, and then the phenomenon stops because nobody ever really gets super duper great footage of this phenomenon. Unless you're Patterson or Gimlin, whatever. But even then. So he's an expert with cameras. He's done the whole Survivor Man series. He can be relied on for that. And the apples were disappearing really high up in the middle of the night. Something's going on. So if it happens, they will catch it. And they will have proof. Or if it stops happening, then they have affected this phenomenon. They have control over it. Those are really the only things that could be reasonably expected to happen. But just like flipping a coin and having it land on its edge, on a knife's edge, and balancing, the odds of it are unbelievably against that outcome, but yet that is where I am saying we need to shift our expectations. So we don't want to be on the extremes, but then we should also expect things to land in an unbelievably vague, inconclusive point, on the knife's edge between proof and disproof. And so, what happened? Well, if you remember me telling it before, the apple, he shows up in the apple the next morning, and the apple and the candy bars, whatever, are gone. They're gone. They're not in the tree. And the camera is there. And he looks at the camera and it says it recorded 10 video files or whatever. So there were 10 things that moved in the still of the night. And obviously one of the things that moved was the apple. So what moved the apple? It was wedged in tight, 18 feet up into the air, into the tree. And he reviews the footage, and the apple is there, and then in a single frame, the apple is not there. And this little branch kind of wiggles, but you can't see what even made it wiggle, and that's it. The rest of the video files were some little mouse crawling around, some little moth flying by, some dust particles going in front of the lens. So he's thinking, what the heck? He can't explain it to this day. He cannot explain it. Except there is an explanation that it's going to play both sides in a supernatural way. Things you didn't think possible, like the camera apparently malfunctioning, or either that or the apple literally just vanished from existence. That can't happen either. But it appears, if you're to believe that the camera worked, then you would have to say that happened, but that can't happen. And then if you're to believe that the apple didn't vanish, but something took it, well, it happened so quickly that in a fraction of a split second, it activated the camera, but nothing was caught. So that's where he was at. But then he's out there doing what? He's trying to answer this question, trying to find proof. Is this Sasquatch thing real or not? He doesn't care if it's real or not. He just wants to know the truth. He has an open mind, but he is skeptical. It's the way he should be. So then he goes and he's going to publish it, and it's like a month later. I don't think I told this part of the story. It's a month later, and he's with his editor, and his editor asks him, well, what do you want me to do with that little hairy blob thing at the end of the one clip, when the apple disappears? And he's like, well, what? There is no, what are you talking about? What do you want me to do with that little hairy knee or head or whatever that pops up and down? So he looks at it, and it's another kind of like, wait a moment, what's going on moment, because obviously he reviewed that footage carefully himself many, many times over. And it's, how could he have missed it? But then what is it? If you watch the footage, it's nothing much, but it is like this maybe black, maybe dark brown, hairy. I think the footage might be, I think it's infrared because it's so dark at night or whatever, but this dark, hairy, kind of curved, it could be the top of a head, it could be a knee, elbow, whatever, covered in hair, that could be a hat, it could be whatever, that it just pops up and down right when the apple disappears. Now, if you would calculate how the camera reacts with however many 60 frames per second or whatever it was pretty high tech. That's pretty fast to do to move something between frames. You would break the speed of sound probably. You know what I mean? Like, what do you make of it? And his editor points this out, and he's like, what? Was it even there? That's my question. He didn't go that far, but I've been looking into these things long enough to ask the question, was it even there in the first place? So, now what happens? What happens now? You know what happens now. Reasonable people will listen to the words I'm saying, and they will begin to write people off. They will write off Les Stroud's Survivor Man as hoaxing, frauding, or delusional, crazy, whatever. But the evidence is against that, because the evidence, let's look at the evidence. Of all the reality shows on TV, which reality show was really the most real? Survivor, the TV show? Nope. A lot of these things scripted, dramatized, hammed up, whatever. Man versus Wild. There was a big controversy in the past between them. Survivor Man was somebody who actually did reality TV the hard way. And, if somebody doesn't build up some trust and respect, well, then what must be done to build up trust and respect? Well, the thing is, it doesn't matter what you have done to prove yourself to be intelligent, trustworthy, respectable, whatever. You don't have to be a perfect saint, or what. You don't have to be, the Messiah or something to achieve a baseline of trustability or a baseline of reasonable intelligence and logic and things like that. Everybody has their quirks, but some people more than others, and some people really aren't very quirky, especially about certain things that they're serious about. And so we keep running into this, that he's going to be written off because people are like programmed robots that go into the logic failure mode. Does not compute. My worldview is being challenged. I must call you a delusional nut, fraud, hoaxer, whatever. That's what they will do. And somebody's asking, Doug, is this actually live this time? Of course it is. It's live. Whenever it says it's live, it's live. Premieres are different, but I think I'm going to do live for the time being because of constraints. It's just better, even though it takes, for some reason, when I do a live, it takes 24 hours for it to process, for the captions to go on, for the for it to go into anybody's search results, practically, or to even the live chat to appear. I don't do anything with it. It just sits in the ether for like 24 hours for me, for my live videos. I don't know why. I'm special. I think it has to go through the Whopper computer in Alexandria, Virginia or something. And they have to have a team meeting at some governmental headquarters and review everything and run and feed it all into their computer and say, is he going to influence any tipping points for our psyops that we're doing currently? And we have to wait when they're value weighted and the risk assessments, and if it's too much for one thing, they have to adjust press releases and whatever. No, I'm taking myself far too seriously there. I jest, because I do bring a certain humility and levity here tonight, as usual. But yeah, I was told by a televangelist once through the television, he looked right at me and he pointed and he said, "You are special." And it was because of Jesus. But also he needed me to send him money, which I didn't do. But I am special, whether Ernst Televangeli says it or not. Anyway, so the edge of reality is an unreasonable yet reasonable expectation, if that makes sense. And I love it because it's the key to to understanding what is not to be understood in any other way. And it's kind of cool because it's almost like a magic. You can do these experiments yourself. How can something be inconclusive? Something that should be so clear. It's actually some of the things that should be the most clear. Like the most significant events in history are some of the most nebulous. It just plays opposites. And if you haven't noticed by now, it's almost like there is a trickster about. There is a trickster at work in this reality. Call it him, her, whatever. Whatever this trickster is, call it what you will. You can hate it, but that doesn't do you much good. You can love it and worship it, but that doesn't do you any good either. You can ignore it, but it's there. Or you can just recognize that it's a trickster and it tricks people. It's tricked you. It's tricked me. And it tricks all kinds of people about all kinds of things. I mean, think about it. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever. So you're telling me the one species that we have not yet discovered that lives all over the world isn't some teeny tiny little insect or some little teeny tiny rodent-like thing or something that lives at the bottom of the ocean like a giant squid. That's reasonable. Or a cuttlefish. Those things are amazing. And they camouflage so amazing. But you can film it. You can put it in a zoo. It's classified, not classified in the way of secret, but classified as a species. They've decoded the genetics, whatever. The gorillas, they were elusive for a while, but 1850, like so many things, it just came into the reality of the common knowledge of people all over the world. Yeah, this is a thing now. It's not a myth. Gorillas are real. And so do we think we know everything? No, there's fish and different things, of course, that haven't been discovered yet. But you're telling me that the one land animal, for example, that would live in this very state I live in, the great state of Ohio in the Midwest of the United States of America, you're telling me that in this state where just to view stars, you have to go to a specific place in all of this quarter of the country. There's one place that is really good to view celestial events because there's so many lights on barns and street lights and car lights and stuff. There's light pollution everywhere. It's covered. But you're telling me that there exists an animal here, too, not just Oregon, Washington, California, that is 10 feet tall and weighs 1,000 pounds. Oh, and it makes the loudest noise, like the loudest noise of any animal. And it's the most human-like in appearance, but somehow you can't find it. Go find one. Can't find it. It'll find you. Because if it's not real, it won't find you, but it does find people sometimes. It's just really interesting how that works. Because, like I said, it's as if there's a trickster out there pulling the strings. Well, I think it's meant to be that way. I think that's part of this existence. And you don't have to love it. You don't have to hate it. But at least have a comfortable relationship with truth enough to recognize that it's not going to be one extreme or another. There's not going to be answers like you want. But the lack of answers that you don't want, that's actually what you should expect. and get comfortable with certain things. So of the people who believe that there is something to the phenomenon, we'll get to them. We'll get to them. First, let's talk about the people who refuse to believe it. They could be super intelligent and otherwise mature individuals, but I was like this a year ago on this topic. And you guys know me. Most of you know me. I've had an open mind, a really open mind about a lot of things, but I just wasn't ready for the Yeti. Is that a catchphrase we can do? Are you ready for the Yeti? I wasn't ready to look into Yetis, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yowies, all that. Because it just was too much. I already tackled some doozies, you know what I mean? I've already been through the ringer and been laughed at and ridiculed and all that stuff just for considering something. But so many people will just like plug their ears and go, la, 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 la. No, it's so immature. It's so weak. There are tens of thousands of footprints found. What are all these people making it up, hoaxing? Are all these people fooled? There's just no way. But yet, is there proof? No. This is what's interesting about it. There's so much evidence that I don't understand how people could say that all of the evidence is that there has to be a boring Wikipedia article to explain it away as nothing of note. Eric Shipton, the mountain climber at 18,000 feet in Everest, 1951, comes across not just one footprint, but a whole track of footprints that they tracked all the way to a crevasse that even with their ladders and things, they couldn't cross. But it had jumped to the other side and continued on. And he took 4 pictures of it with his camera. He was using the film. He was trying to conquer Everest. He needed that film. He needed that camera to prove to the world that he summited Everest, because that was his plan, that was his hope, that Tenzing Norgay and Edmund Hillary did about 4 years later. See, I did my homework this time. But he took 4 pictures and he put his ice axe next to it, and the footprint, it's a bare footprint, but they're at 18,000 feet, higher than 18,000 feet on Everest. And it's 1951. It's not like today where they have a base camp at around the altitude. No. At that time, there was nobody up there. Are you kidding me? And if they were, would they be barefoot? And if they were barefoot, would they have a 16 inch long foot that's 8 inches wide with one really big toe? I mean, come on. That is evidence. Is it proof? No. What made the footprint? I don't know. We don't know. We don't have. Is there a picture of what made that footprint? No, there's not. So it's just interesting because these people will say, they just can't handle it. And that was me just a year ago. I just couldn't. Didn't want to look into it. But when you do look into it, if you have some integrity and if you're not too weak to admit that, I'm not going to call 10,000 different people all liars that have had all these different experiences. But then you look into the experiences, there's 10,000 experiences, and the best film that we have to date seems to be like the Patterson-Gimlin film. There's some other ones. Could they be hoaxed? Could they be faked? They could be, but it's pretty good evidence. But again, that's this big thing. Why do we never find one? So you see what I'm getting at. It's something's going on. You have to say something's going on. It's kind of like a joke. It's kind of like a trick of reality. And I go back to the Native Americans and they say, well, these things we know about them, and they are special, like there's some kind of a spiritual significance, as with all animals. But with them, it's a little bit more unique and pronounced in different ways. And I would tend to agree with that. There's a film, or there's a TV series and a book that I like. And anyway, long story short, it's got like a kind of a Yeti type monster in it. And in one scene, it's just perfectly explained where they're trying to figure out what it is. The shamans, the native Inuit say it's a creature from the shamans, created by the gods. It roams the earth. It can shapeshift, and it's made of muscles and spells. And they're like, what is it? And finally, this one guy who's really wise in the show, he just says, about the creature, I have no answers. We were not meant to know of it. And that's it. And that's perfect. That's the answer. About this creature, I have no answers. We weren't meant to know of it. Done. About the JFK assassination, I have no answers. We weren't meant to know of it. About the attacks of the 11th of the previous month of years ago, around 2001, I have no answers. We weren't meant to know of it. And the list goes on and on. About the origin of species, I have no answers. We weren't meant to know of it. Although that one could arguably be said that the creation story is accurate, but that seems impossible. So what do you do with that? People will write it off. It's delusional. It's someone's imaginings. Da 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 da. But I have, in life, when I'm talking to somebody and they do that crap where they start to cite Wikipedia and all this, and they have no interest and they don't want to discuss the evidence, the conversation's over. I have no time for you. You bore me. I don't say this out loud. But you see, I say it with humility because I was this way only a year ago on this particular topic. On other topics, no. But then there are probably many, many topics somebody would want to talk to me about, and I'm just not ready for it, I don't know about whatever it is. Let's say somebody's like, comes up to me and says, I have to speak to you about your aura. And okay, well, I'm not like, okay, I would listen and everything, and I would think about it, but it would take me time. You can't just dump this stuff on somebody. There's a reason that it takes people so long and so many life experiences, or they have to have some natural born talent or ability to understand these things, to be proficient at it and not fall into one of these traps of the extremes. Oh, it's Gigantopithecus. It's a primate that is just flesh, blood, and everything, just like a gorilla, but it's so elusive and evasive. The government's covering it up. No, the government's not. Here's something else. I could do a whole video. I might have to do a whole video on it, but I'll touch on it now. I want to talk to you about what the government knows. What does the government know, and what does the government not know? Because I think I have a really good idea, and it's really not what you would expect. The answer is, let me think about it. Where have I seen, let me think for a minute. Where have I seen, other than like fictional TV shows, because there isn't some special agency that keeps the secrets, and it's not compartmentalized either. It's actually stranger than that, because the tricks that reality plays on us, on everybody, it plays the same tricks on the government. The people who are supposedly in power, a lot of them know they're not really there in power like that. They kind of know that they're put there. And they used to acknowledge that, like, we the king of divine rule, because they would, at least, as much as wrong with that, at least they were acknowledging that they weren't really there on their own, by their own cunning or whatever. And they could cite lineage or whatever, but what happens when somebody else conquers? It's just, there's other things at play. There's other things going on. And they really don't have that much control. But one thing that they are good at is they recognize when something's going down, that the reality wants this now. And they may have ways, they may be unholy ways, I don't know, but they may have ways of seeing things coming so they can use it to their advantage, profit off of it or whatever. I'm sure that comes at a cost, just wisdom tells you that, but some people don't care. And they'll willingly be fools and let the trickster have its way just so they can gain some advantage that they think is what they want. And then I think a lot of times they find out they shouldn't have wanted that or whatever. I don't know. But like in 2020, that something was going down. Nothing could stop it. But also it wasn't very real, so it wasn't going to last, and it all evaporates, and it's as if it never happened. Like, how can that be? Well, it's the same thing. It's like, how can something make footprints but not exist? Well, you've seen it happen, a lot of you. You've seen your neighbors freak out over something that was invisible. You couldn't see it, you couldn't smell it, you couldn't taste it. It didn't affect anybody. The tests for it were inconclusive, or they were overly conclusive one way or another, but didn't line up with any real symptoms or lack of symptoms or any. It's just, the whole thing was just ridiculous or whatever, but to them it was real. And see, when you approach the edge of reality, this is another topic I want to get into, besides what the government knows and doesn't know. One of the things I think some people who are in power in the government and elsewhere know that gives them a little bit more leverage is that when you approach the edge of reality, your beliefs, your faith manifests outcomes or influences outcomes or changes directions. It causes things to happen that otherwise wouldn't have happened, or it prevents things from happening that seemed inevitable. And what do I mean by the edge of reality? Well, it could be a physical location. So, again, with Native Americans, they have these sacred places and things like that. You go, okay, you do this shamanic ritual thing, whatever, but it was also important, or it is also important where that is done. And there are things people do, some people who, I don't know, whatever, it doesn't matter to me, whatever their beliefs are, but they do things to make an area more productive or more blessed, or whatever, like that a location that perhaps isn't sacred. It's just a plain old location. It's just some coordinates on the map. But they go there and maybe they work the land, or they do these things, and it's their life experiences, their thoughts, their feelings, their energy, whatever goes into it, and it makes it sacred. People believe that about where their loved ones were or were buried or whatever. Like, I'm not one of these people who's big about where's this person buried, visit the grave, things like that. But I understand that other people, that means a lot to them, and in their world, in their reality, maybe that they see something that I don't, So that's the edge of reality. Well, that would be, what is the edge of reality? Have you ever been with somebody who is on about, they're at the end of their life. They're transitioning from this world into whatever's next. Have you been there and seen that? I have, and I can tell you that that's the edge of reality. Some things happen. They see things. They talk. Okay, you can write it off. Oh, yeah, they're low oxygen, or blood pressure, whatever. They're just talking nonsense or whatever. Well, it's not exactly nonsense. They're talking to somebody as if somebody's in the room and they know exactly who it is and what that person's saying, but you can't hear it. Have you ever seen that? Talk to hospice nurses. They see this stuff all the time. That's the edge of reality. And that's where your beliefs and things matter. They do matter. I don't know how much, but I think it's an opportunity. You can get something out of that. Recently, I don't know what it is about this time of year or what. Some people get really testy. They get really impatient. I don't know if it's like they can't take any more heat or sunlight, or I don't know what. But they get really, dogs will do that. Dogs bite in like August, October, September, October. A little bit more. But where was I going with that? Lost my train of thought for a second. So they're negative. They get into this mode. Everything's bad and wrong, and they're getting screwed over and this and that. And it's like, hold on. They do get screwed over because they believe they're being cheated. So then they see it as they're being cheated. And they throw their money down, walk away, and they've lost their money. They got cheated or whatever. But it wasn't happening except in their mind, but then they made it a reality. Likewise, I see people, they're somewhere and like these people who are donors, very generous donors to an organization. They have this vitality and this positivity that life is grand and all things work together for good and God is good and all people just need a little love and all this stuff. And they're donating a ton of money to some organization that they believe in. Why do they have all these blessings, all this wonderful stuff? Because they look at life that you're there, you're here for a reason, and you're meant to love and be loved and be happy and be productive and do well to others, and they'll do well to you and pay it forward and all this. And you just see that they manifest that. And I'm not signing up for any motivational speaker courses or anything that sells that type of stuff. But I do see it. And what my point is, you can't just do that every day and make this. That's bullcrap. In 3 months, I was earning $75,000 a week while on my new yacht. Whatever. Come on. Is it impossible? No, it's not impossible, but they're selling something. It doesn't work that way, but it does work that way sometimes. And it can be at a place or a time, or sometimes it just happens in the most unexpected way. It's unpredictable. And my point is, the nature of reality, it has an edge. And when you approach that edge, that's where things start to get a little strange. Like, we've looked into geography, the shape of the earth and all that stuff. And where's the live view of the South Pole from a satellite? I want to see it. I haven't seen it. Best I've seen is some renderings. It looks like a 1992 video game. It's 2025, but I'm gonna look and see from space. Well, I guess the South Pole, let's see. Yeah, the South Pole would be illuminated now, right? I want to see from space exactly what the South Pole looks like in detail. Where are the clouds? Zoom in on the storm fronts. Give me a break. There's something going on, weird. But yet, okay, satellites are at the edge of reality, I do see lights in the sky going by sometimes. I don't know what it's. I can go back to this phrase again and again. I love it so much. Of the satellites, I have no answers. We weren't meant to know of it. But how can that be? How could it be? I don't know. But it's fascinating. But I also know that you can't know. And that if in your life you could get a job and you could work on satellites, you can work your whole career, and for you, they'll be real. Whereas that person might have a brother or a cousin who becomes a park ranger, and to him, okay, we've lost somebody in the national forest. Let's go to the satellite footage and track. No, you can't. Oh, we lost, or I'm part of the federal aviation thing. We lost flight MH370. Let's go to the satellite footage and track it down. Oh, can't. Wow. There just happened to be, there's nothing on it. We don't know. We never saw it. So, to that person, he might run into a Bigfoot, plain as day from him, and he's flabbergasted. He has no camera. He has no proof. And what's he going to do? So is he going to tell his brother about the Bigfoot? Well, his brother will tell him about the satellites, but hey, brother, where are the satellites when I was searching for this hiker got lost, and satellites aren't worth crap. We don't use satellites to find anybody. It's worthless crap. It's like they don't even exist. And then the guy who works his whole career building satellites and all that, he gets the data back. I don't know how it works. But he hears he ran into a Bigfoot in Yosemite. Give me a break. Haha. Tell me another one. Blah, blah, blah. Who's right? They're both right. Who's wrong? They're both wrong. There you go. So, yeah. And I think it shifts too. Let's not discount our ancestors. If they talked about leprechauns, fairies, whatever. God, that sounds ridiculous. Nymphs, will-o'-the-wisp, vampires in Austria during the Crimean War. Vampires. Well, there's some evidence of some really reasonable people talking about experiences they had, but is it repeatable? For a time, maybe, but not really. Here's the thing, though. Is it observable? Yes and no. It's observable, but not in a permanent way. People will see it, but I don't think it gets any better than the Patterson-Gimlin film. And from the other side, it's just like they want you to believe something. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, walking. That's like the Patterson-Gimlin film in reverse. You know what I mean? They have the proof without the evidence. And then the other thing is they have the evidence without the proof. They have a mountain. There's a mountain of evidence for this fabled Sasquatch going back hundreds of years, if not longer. Mountains of evidence, not a shred of proof. And then you go to Wikipedia, it's all about the proof. They prove this, they prove that. But then the evidence is ambiguous at best. It's problematic. So, and yeah, the dog man, dog heads, that's in history. And I tell you what, if the Sasquatch were to become, all of a sudden, it becomes real, then what would I do? What would I think? Well, a number of things. Okay, the gorilla became real, but it is real. The cuttlefish is real. It's incredible. I do not know how cuttlefish do what they do. If you don't know what I'm talking about, watch the videos of these things camouflaging. It's like magic. They change the color, shape, and texture of their skin to match the environment, even if they can't exactly see it, but just glancing, and they do it so well. Now, chameleons, we know about, they change the color of their, but not, this is something on this other level. It's just absolutely incredible. And it would be unbelievable. It's like something out of mythology, but it's real. I don't know since when were cuttlefish discovered. I bet it was after 1850. I don't know why I say that, but let's say that the Sasquatch becomes, they found one. It's somewhat intelligent. The NFL recruits them for the linemen, and they just, whatever team has more Sasquatch wins the Super Bowl every year. The Sasquatch become the world heavyweight boxing champions overnight. Sasquatch women absolutely flood the online dating sites, reversing the trend of more men than women. All of a sudden, it's way more women than men. Because the 7'8", bearded, hairy, 700-pound Sasquatch women. Yeah, because the Sasquatch men are killing it, man. They are the players. All the ladies swoon over them because they shave them up, and they're super muscular. Like they look like cartoon men. They're just so. Yeah. Anyway, let's say that happens, or let's say they're not that intelligent. They're in a zoo or whatever, and they don't have this mind speak, and they don't have this infrasound to make people afraid, and they can't camouflage by changing their shape or their fur or whatever, and they just were really good at hiding until they weren't. And, well, first of all, I think some Native American First Nation people have been predicting for a long time that the Sasquatch, like they kind of ruled the land before the people, and then they rule the night, and that there's a time coming where then they come back in, and I think peacefully, like into the mix. So that would be interesting. But I also think if that happened and it's just like, let's say it turns into a boring, it's just, there's a new Wikipedia article, the discovery of the Sasquatch is a real thing, and it's this boring animal. It's just like another gorilla, basically. It's not what people said somehow. It's, all that stuff was bullshit. But there is something that makes these big footprints, and here it is, and it's just, it'll bore the hell out of you. Because that's what Wikipedia does so well. And that's what official reality with proof, like, it's so boring. They went to the moon, nothing there, boring, don't go back, done. It's, yeah, Wikipedia loves it. There's nothing super about that. It's just a dead, there's no life, there's no spirit, no soul to it. It's just a dead, vast desolation, wasteland, like Wikipedia. But, yeah, there's certainly no paranormal. Somebody mentions paranormal. Nope. But then, all of a sudden, if that did happen, and it could, it probably will, I don't know. Things change, but then they don't change. Because as soon as that happened, like I said last time, out comes the dogheads. I like how Martin Leakey from Wales says, dogheads. Then come the dogheads. They start howling in the night. Oh, werewolves. People start seeing werewolves. Oh. Have you seen the dog heads are watching you? They can cloak. You know, and this and that. which people are saying now, but see, it'll be this thing where that starts to happen. And who knows, if you would go back hundreds of years, were you there? I wasn't there. Hundreds of years ago, maybe there were will-o'-the-wisps, fairies, leprechauns, sprites, nymphs. I don't know. But they said there were. Sounds ridiculous now. But what would we sound like to them if we said, you know what, we made this tin can and we had this president, he said, I guarantee in the next decade that we will put a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth. So help me God, we will do this for the science. And then it happened. First try. Bam. First try. Went to the moon. We were struggling with... long distance communications and landlines and things like that because they would be overloaded and the party lines on telephones and stuff. But we sent somebody to the moon. It's 2025. If you make a wrong turn on a trail in certain national parks, there's no communication. You can't, even if you have an air quote satellite phone, it won't work. And if the Starlink is overhead, supposedly you can be lucky, depending on the winds, if you have communication. But you have to have a powerful big antenna. You have to go to a very high spot because you have to get closer to it. It's not about like a land signal. No. It's space. But you just get that little tiny bit closer to it by going up the top of the hill, and all of a sudden your reception gets better. But anyway... yeah, they would say that sounds ludicrous. Thou art ludicrous with thine tales, they would tell us. And they'd be right. But see, we're the very few, the rare, the elite of today where we know the modern day fairy tales that everybody believes. But I don't know, again, you can't discount that for some people it might just be, it's essentially real to them. But you can see where the limitations are. And that they can believe so hard in the moon landing stuff, but will they ever go there? They won't. They won't. Just like somebody can believe so hard in evolution, but try as they may. They can be very, very prodigious with their reproduction. And as they're in the act of reproducing at the moment, just like with a story, there's a climax with that moment. And they say, by the power of Charles Darwin, I command my progeny to sprout wings and impregnate their mate. And is that child going to have wings? Meanwhile, somewhere else, somebody has to do the same thing and then have a child of the opposite sex do the same and then have that one have wings and then they mate and then that's how the wings would evolve. Because that's how evolution works. But we know that won't work. So, I don't know. Now people are going to start trying it. They're going to go... Some listeners tonight are going to go off and their spouse or whoever is going to say, what the hell? Because they'll be yelling, by the power of evolution, I say, henceforth our progeny shall have mind speak. What the hell? Frank, what are you talking about? Oh, man. Oh, boy. So, boy, do I want to stop on that note? No. I don't want to stop on that note. But, hey, So there's something else that's weird about this. When you are on the edge of reality, when you witness something unbelievable, there's a strange thing that happens. Some people say time slows down. It can be like a spiritual experience because even if you forget it, you don't really forget it. It's just part of you. And that can be positive or negative too. You have to deal with it if it's negative. You have to work through it. But something else is when that happens, a lot of people just don't react the way they think they would. Like if you see something crazy happening, sometimes you freeze, the freeze, fight, flight, fawn, all that stuff. But an example is, so I was listening to some more podcasts where Les Stroud, the Survivor Man, was talking about how he had these experiences that he looks back and he thinks that could have been like Sasquatch or whatever when he was out in the wild. Things he would hear, he didn't see anything, but he would hear stuff. And like one time it was these big thumping footsteps of a bipedal out in the way out wilderness. Like it made him afraid, and he's not afraid. Like that was very unusual that he would be afraid. So it's already, that's weird. But he wouldn't unzip the tent and look out to see what the heck it was, which he would normally do even if it was a bear. He can't explain why that he didn't do that. But then now he would, because he's opened his mind up to this possibility of there being this creature. So he's out there looking for this creature, and he shared that he saw these lights in the sky that he could only describe them as like, there were 4 of them. They were like UFOs, UAPs, UFOs. Really, really big, bright lights, massive. And he couldn't tell how far away they were. But they were way bigger than, they couldn't be planets, stars, whatever. Couldn't have been airplanes out in the wilderness that low. Didn't make a sound. They seemed so close, the way they illuminated this stuff around. And he's there with the camera. But in his mind, he was prepared to take a picture or whatever of this Sasquatch thing. That's what he was focused on. And he sees that, and it's just his mind. He just wasn't computing. Did not compute. So he didn't know what to do. And then they disappear. But he definitely saw it, and he just doesn't know what to think about it. And he doesn't have anybody to tell about it because he's not into the UFO thing or whatever. But then it just like kind of introduces that. And that's like what the reality does. It's like when you least expect it, here you go. Let's mix things up. Because, well, I can say one thing about the trickster of reality. Yes, the trickster may want to make a fool of you. The trickster may want to distract you from God or your purpose in life and whatever, and try to see how far you'll go down believing some crazy stuff that you would go to war and fight your brethren because they're from another nation because the newspaper says they're evil, and like how far will you go with your beliefs and that stuff? I don't know what it gets out of that, but it's there. But one thing that can be said for it is it's not boring. Oh, it always has something for you. It is not boring. Like Wikipedia. That's the thing. Science, if there's one thing that I can say I just have not liked about science and all that stuff, and I love to be skeptical, and I don't want to get into the woo-woo stuff and all that. I love to know, like, I love to deal, I wake up in the morning and deal with the reality. Just the reality, you know what I mean? But my gosh, wouldn't it be boring? If everything in Wikipedia were true, and everything outside of Wikipedia that is considered paranormal, spiritual, esoteric in any way, is not true. It's just nonsense. It's just fantasy. It's just made up. It's just delusions. It's just misconceptions. It's pareidolia, blah, blah, blah. My gosh, what a boring existence So boring. And I think animals have some kind of connection with this spiritual side of things. Because if you think about it, why would an animal even want to live if it was just really just all about survival, eating, do I have enough food? You know, the what is it, the 3 F's or whatever? Eat, drink, reproduce, rest, repeat, die. Whoop-de-doo, what's the point? But every animal seems to want to live. They must get something out of it, but you can't see it. You can't quantify that. There's a reason you don't want to be cruel to animals. But what would that reason be if everything in Wikipedia is true? You know, I guess there would be some, but I mean, there's no reason to be cruel. But how can scientists do things that are essentially cruel in the name of science? If it's always kind of been that way, how do they justify that? Because they don't understand. You know, what don't they understand? What scientists don't understand? Spirit, you know, anything esoteric, anything interesting. That's why they're boring. I used to defend scientists, you know, when people say, oh, that sounds boring or whatever. It is. It freaking is. So much of it is. So it's even found in this Bigfoot research. Of the Bigfoot researchers who have the PhDs who work in, and there are a handful, maybe 2, that have PhDs that work as professors in universities. I think there's one over in Washington, because it's Washington. It's like it's a place on the earth where the Sasquatch thing is more real, 100 times more real than it ever is when you're in New York City, whatever. But even that scientist, I think his name is Dr. Jeff Meldrum. I'm not certain on that. But anyway, he'll talk about Bigfoot and he tries to do research. He gets ridiculed and all that by his peers. You know, the peer pressure of peer reviews that is part of science. But when it gets into the paranormal, supernatural aspects, which are closely linked with all these things, he'll just write it off. That portion of it, he just cannot deal with it immediately. It's Gigantopithecus. It's by Darwinian evolution. It's a hominid that is closely related to the Neanderthal and all that crap. Because that's what it has to be in his circle, or, you know, in his reality. That's as much as he can allow for. But this thing where people see one and they get this unbelievable supernatural fright, and they freeze. They can't even lift their rifle to shoot one that they normally would think to do, or they can't lift their camera to take a picture of it until it's far enough away to be a blob on the screen or something. You know, it seems to have some kind of a mind speak, or you can't sneak up on one without it knowing, because it can just sense through the ether your thoughts as you approach, or whatever. I don't know. But I suppose maybe he would allow for that if there was some kind of scientific precedent where they found some fish or something, electric eels or whatever, that can sense the presence of another. And then, oh, well, now we have a mechanism where we can believe that because Wikipedia says we can. Well, now they would do that. But it's so slow, that kind of stuff. Life is short. If you wait for Wikipedia to come around and, oh, well, finally, you know, in the year 2352, they admit on Wikipedia that, well, dragons could possibly be real because there are these frogs that spit hot fluid that compresses and makes it hot, and it's almost ignites. It's so hot that they knock out insects, and you combine that with like this bird that swallows these little flint rocks, knocks them together, and then that could make the sparks, and it could conceivably breathe fire at that. Well, it takes too long. Why not just believe what your ancestors said? Or consider what I'm saying, that reality works in this way where maybe there's a time where dragons are very real. Very real. And then the time of the dragons passes, like this horribly sad song, Puff the Magic Dragon, elucidates for us as children in a horrifying, depressing way. The kind of thing that would make Carl Sagan proud. To destroy the spirit of children, take the light out of their eyes of hope and wonder. But anyway, I think that's a good way to end it. So, yes, do not let anybody take the light and wonder out of your eyes, the curiosity and joy of life that children have so naturally, that the world and perhaps the trickster of reality seeks to undermine and take away and damage. Do not let it happen. Be joyous, be positive, manifest wonderful things. You don't know how great things can be. You don't know what miracles could occur. Just consider it. Think about it. It might happen. You think about it. Mark my words. You think about it, it might happen. I even thought of different experiments that come from some research that I did of the people who looked into these types of esoteric things in the past with Native American tribes. So much is lost. But one of the things is, in this time of year, take a acorn or a buckeye, if you live in where I do, or a leaf, an oak leaf, and just put it in your pocket and just consider that for the next however many hours as that's near you, it's going to absorb negative things from your body, physically, mentally, spiritually. It's going to absorb it and take it away and let it die in the leaf, because that's what it's meant to do. And therefore kind of purify you in a way. And it's like medicine. And you'll feel better. You'll be better. Some things that bothered you stop bothering you. Some bad dreams that you would have had don't happen now because it was taken away by this acorn or this buckeye or this oak leaf that you picked up and put in your pocket. Just try it. Try it and get back to me. Because that's the kind of thing, oh my gosh, what would Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson, the many authors of Wikipedia say to that? Oh, the trickster and them would all agree that you shouldn't do that. You should be up on the latest with the explosion or the shooting or the whatever. And think about that. No. You should be marveling at the wonders of the latest NASA press release of what they're talking about, exoplanets. And no. I'm going to think about how this, this leaf I put in my pocket, how it's, I don't know how, but it's going to take this negative energy, negative poisons and things that were injected into me as a kid or whatever, and just take it out somehow. I don't know how, but who knows? Maybe it can happen somehow. Just consider it. It can't hurt. You might have some leaf debris in your pocket. You get rid of that, but when you get rid of it, who knows what else you get rid of? I don't know. Something to think about. Something to think about. And everybody can get an oak leaf, I think. There's nowhere in the world you can't get one. Kind of interesting that I would have read about this with the oak leaf. So, but it could be anything, it's just like, if you have this belief that you have available to you everything you need to do what you need to do in your time here. And you're here for a reason. You're not a cosmic accident. Like Neil deGrasse Tyson says, you are a cosmic accident. You have no importance in the universe. When you die, you'll go back to the nothing that you were. Now let me sign your papers with my autograph because I am a star. Let me pull your shirt up and let me sign those. Well, it's Neil deGrasse Tyson. You know how he's reputed to be. But that's probably neither here nor there. I criticize his intellectual points of view because they're just actually ridiculous, some of them. And just ridiculous. But anyway, we've talked about that. We don't need to beat up. He's banned from the channel anyway. I forgot. He's banned. We don't speak of him. That's my mistake. I should end this stream now before I speak of that being again. We want to talk about positive things. Think about positive things. So, put an oak leaf in your pocket, and your memories and thoughts and influences, such as those engendered by the likes of Neil deGrasse Tyson, will be pulled out from you, and your wonder and amazement and joy in life will return. The light in your eyes that you had as a child from being at home with your parents and your pets and going to Sunday school and this and that light that was dimmed by the likes of Carl Sagan in the classroom when you were indoctrinated, maybe that light will shine a little bit brighter again after all these years. Who knows? Let it be so. And yeah. So I'm glad you're here. I'll read the chat later. I was kind of just staring off into space talking this whole time, and I apologize. I didn't really read the chat very much, but I'm glad you're all here. I have over 100 viewers again. We have returned to triple digits for that, and I'm glad you're all here. Thank you for that. And we will, make sure you take out the acorns, oak leaves, and buckeyes before washing your pants or hoodie or whatever it is you wear, and throw it away, because it's this time of year is for things to let some things die, that are meant to. It's the seasons. For everything has its season, and it's not bad or good. It's just nature. It's essentially good. Could be better, but will be. But it takes effort. It takes energy. It takes direction, and that's what we can do as creative, thoughtful, spiritual beings that are not what Brian Cox says we are. We are much better than that. Brian. Jerk. Actually, they don't upset me because they have no power. Yeah. If you're not tricked. See, the thing about a trickster is they are the most hilarious things. So if you're the fool of the joke and you get bamboozled, well, of course you're not happy, but you're the fool. But if you see that when you watch like one of these shows, candid shows where they fool people with the cameras and stuff, and then they, aha, we got you, or whatever. It's funny. It's funny. And it's not boring. And of course it involves pushing reality to the edge. They think, how did this happen? Couldn't be real or whatever. It's not really. But in the moment, it kind of seems that way, and that makes it exciting. It's fun. So, can kind of embrace some of these things. Just expect it. And definitely don't take yourself too seriously. Don't take yourself, not seriously enough, but don't take yourself too seriously. And do not take the world too seriously, because it's not. Especially the harder they try to get you to believe something, the less true it probably is. If they want you to take something so seriously, like politics stuff, just give me a break. and then watch it all evaporate. Oh, something that was so important. Give it a little time, doesn't matter. Pfft, nothing. There are people who are presidents they're pretty much forgotten. They were the president of the I am the president of the United States of America. What a big deal. But give it enough years and you ain't nothing. So anyway, yes, humor, levity, and humility. Anyway, I'm done preaching. I feel like I was very preachy this time. Sorry about that. Hopefully you enjoyed. And we'll see where we go next time. Okay? So we'll see you later. And I will bid you adieu. To you and you and you and you.